Welcome to Yoga PodShop, half podcast, half workshop, but all things yoga. I am your main host, Kaycie Nikole, and joining me today is my lovely co-host, Samantha Weisner. And today we're going to go over our very first episode content, New Beginnings. We're going to go over who we are, what Yoga PodShop is, what our intentions are with this ongoing, hopefully, sessions that we get to have together. And then we'll also just want to kind of get to know our community, get to know you guys, and hopefully be able to connect some dots on how you can be part of this bigger vision with us. Okay, so a little bit about me, Kaycie Nikole. Somewhere along the way, I've dropped my last name, but Kaycie Hall, if you want it for the full name. I've been teaching for the past 12 years and mostly in the Central Valley, California. And I know y'all in here, so I'm comfortable with y'all. But for those that are going to be watching this after the fact, grew up in Modesto, taught in that area. And at the time, yoga was so different. So different. In fact, there was one yoga studio when I first started teaching, which is where I got certified. And then since now there's yoga everywhere, and I feel like yoga teachers everywhere. And it used to be such a small pocket and community, which is actually where I met Sam. And we've been teaching together for years. And long story short, after kind of teaching at various different studios and just trying to get exposure, trying to get to know people in the area, get to know students, I started to notice that we had a pretty big community growing, and decided to open up Elevate in 2017. And yeah, that was amazing. I feel like it was finally watching all of these people that I had kind of gotten to know over the course of the previous 5 years, and then just kind of bringing them together under one roof was one of the most amazing experiences ever. And when I think back on the times at Elevate and the people that were a part of it and the teachers that were a part of it and the overall just vibe and energy, it was exactly what I was looking for and exactly what I wanted to kind of create. And then COVID happened, and I feel like yoga has changed a lot since then. So drastically. And I feel like kind of going through this whirlwind of figuring out like what is our practice when it's not, going to a studio and having that availability, recognizing, you had to adapt and change and move in these different directions. People were moving away. There was just so much change that was inevitable. And I feel like as a yoga teacher, it was a really kind of confusing time to go through. You're trying to constantly navigate how you feel about everything that's going on while trying to also figure out how to serve and be there for people while also being respectful of, space and boundaries and all the things that were happening. And so I feel like we all kind of found our own shifting and rearranging into how we wanted to serve as yoga teachers. And come full circle after selling Elevate last year, I feel like I was going through all these trying to figure out what this next step was, and opened myself up to a lot of different opportunities and pockets for, growing outside of just an identity of a yoga teacher. And come full circle. Everything usually comes full circle. But I remember one day I actually wasn't feeling well, and I was just outside just kind of journaling, and I just had my floodgates open, and the idea of Yoga PodShop was born. And I feel like the idea itself it's this idea of recognizing that as a yoga teacher, there is so much separation. Like there's so much, it feels like a very solo journey at times that you're trying to just figure things out. And even though you're building community, it can often feel very lonely. And I remember having Sam and having a couple other yoga teachers in the space that were like my rocks and the people that I knew that I could talk to about all things yoga that my non-yoga friends just didn't get or understand, and I really valued my relationships with other yoga teachers that I was exposed to during that time for that very reason. And so the idea of Yoga PodShop is a way of bringing yoga teachers together because there is so much separation. And I realized there's so much value in us all coming together. So I wanted to create a platform specifically for us yoga teachers to be able to, no matter where we're teaching, no matter what we do, be able to come together and talk about all things yoga, talk about all the behind the scenes, be able to connect on deeper levels, but also be able to share our insight, our wisdom, our knowledge, and be able to help kind of uplift and support one another through a community specifically for us. And so after working with, students and then doing teacher trainings and working with teachers, I realized that working with other instructors is just so powerful. And so I feel super drawn to being able to kind of put together this community of yoga teachers to where we can not only help each other kind of grow and learn, but we can also, be able to better serve others, be able to network and all these things. So I brought this idea to Sam and I was like, I don't even really know what I'm thinking right now, but I'm just going to blurt it out. And I feel like she's been amazing at helping me kind of navigate different directions as to where this can go. And I'll get a little bit deeper into what this could potentially grow into, but just so you have a little bit more insight on me, how I've gotten to this point and how Yoga PodShop even came to be a thing. So I'm going to pass the torch on over to Samantha. If you want to pop in and give a little intro yourself.
Hello, Kaycie. Thanks for the intro. I am so happy to be here. So yeah, full circle, indeed. Always by my side, Kaycie. Even though I am on the East Coast right now, so I'll preface this. There is a tropical storm entering my vicinity. So if I'm gone, I miss you all. It's because Wi-Fi. That's what happens on the East Coast, not in California so much. So I got to know Kaycie 12 years ago when I was on the West Coast living in Modesto. And that's where I started my yoga teaching journey. I actually did a 3-week intensive training and wanted to jump into teaching yoga right away and got a job at the same studio as Kaycie. And then from there, more and more studios began to open in Modesto, and we just continued to add more and more classes. Since then, right before COVID, I moved to the East Coast and everything shut down. I literally moved March of 2020 to the East Coast, and there was no jobs for me as a body worker. I'm a massage therapist or as a yoga teacher. And I went right onto Zoom right away. And I learned from that moment in time where a lot of us were struggling, especially entrepreneurs who needed to be hands-on or face-to-face, how much we really depended on our community to put food on our table. And thankfully, the yoga students that continued to jump online because the yoga studios were closed and they still wanted to practice with me, they were paying me via Venmo. And it was like everything, changed right then and there, along with a lot of other things happening in my life, divorce, relocation, now unemployment, COVID. It was a little nuts, but I made it and I'm still teaching yoga. And I think a lot of yoga teachers have a similar story of, and just people who are into yoga or not into yoga, they all kind of shifted their work, everything changed. And hence why we're all on Zoom and listening to podcasts now. So all of that said, I can tell you as a yoga teacher, I like to put yoga teachers not necessarily into categories, but there's yoga teachers who come to teach yoga as a side job. They're working full time and yoga teaching is their side job. There's other yoga teachers who are stay-at-home moms or wives, and they don't necessarily need the finances or yoga to support them financially. So they're kind of doing it for fun. And then there's the yoga teacher that's trying to make it full time, their full-time job. And I can tell you, I have been all three of those. And the perspectives that I have for all three, the one that I have not been is the yoga studio owner, which Kaycie has been. And that's where a lot of yoga teachers, they kind of hit a threshold and then say, what's next? I guess I need to open up a yoga studio. Or they're trying to figure out a different route. So I've never been a yoga studio owner, but I have, as a yoga teacher, worked for many yoga studios. I've never burned any bridges intentionally because I want to always have good relationships with yoga studio owners. I respect yoga studio owners, and at the same time learning how to venture away from the yoga studio as the full-time yoga teacher. So that's kind of where I'm at. And that's why I was so excited when Kaycie brought this to me. I'm like, I have so much to talk about, so much to say, so many questions. And especially because I like to teach at all different studios, and I like to practice at a lot of different studios. The separation that you're talking about is how can we all come together to support each other, and even all coming from different places of what our needs are and wants are as yoga teachers, and how we can collaborate so that yoga studio owners, all different kinds of teachers, can meet together and talk about yoga shit. So yeah, I'm glad to be here. Is that it?
Yeah. I kind of want to branch off that and just say, it's just really interesting because I wonder, to the extent of what that is it you're branching off into this new direction that it's you're just taking everything that you can get as far as teaching opportunities, that you're spread so thin that you're really only exposed to the people that you see when you're in studios, So I feel like for me, I started to get relationships with the people that I saw all the time. So it was if, the person who teaches before your classes, or the people who teach after your classes, or the people who run the front desk, or the students who always come to the classes, those are the people you build relationships with because they're the people you're exposed to the most. But it also can be very limiting sometimes because it's if you're only exposed to the same people, you're not getting that constant information and insight of other people from other spaces that are doing things in different ways. And I think that was a huge thing that I had started to pick up on, was how different studios operate. How the structure and even straight up from the people who owned it and their intention with it, it's how every studio felt was so different. And I feel that can also be conflicting because you want to obviously vibe with the space. And I think being a yoga studio owner was never my goal. It was never my dream. It was never the thing that I wanted to do. It was the thing that I felt like I had to do in a moment because I felt like I was wanting to deliver something, an energy or a vibe that I wasn't able to execute in a space that didn't support that kind of energy. And so I was well, if I can't find a space that supports what I want to grow, then I'm going to just do something myself. And actually, it's a funny story because I remember having a total breakdown at home after just being I don't know how to do what I'm going to be doing. And I have to figure out another way to serve. And Sam was there comforting me. And I just remember being I think I'm going to open up a yoga studio, my own yoga studio. And just the look on her face of are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Absolute shock. Support, but shock. It was I support you, dude. You go do that. And then, sure enough, she was right there with me. So things have shifted a lot. And I feel that's kind of the thing with yoga teachers in general. Going back to what you said, Sam, is if you decide to do yoga full time, it is such a different mindset and perspective on you have to take care of your basic survival needs. You now have to take care of yourself under the money that you make as being a yoga teacher, which if, once you start teaching and you get so excited, yeah, you're taking on all these classes. And then all of a sudden, months go by and you're 18 classes a week deep. and you're like just so tired and fatigued every day, you have zero energy, and you're like, okay, something's got to give because I am busting my ass right now and I'm barely able to like, pay rent. So it's like, obviously for me, it does feel limiting if you only think about, making money on yoga through yoga classes, because there's so much more that you can be expanding upon. And even based on who's in this session today, I know both of y'all are some pretty good entrepreneurs, and you guys do a lot of your own kind of directions and marketing to your own demographics as well. I know a lot of events and also a lot of massage over here for Anita too. So it's like having all these different pockets and outlets opens up different opportunities. So it's like if you're going in the direction of doing more events, you're going to have, maybe that's your thing, and you're just finding all these different ways that you can offer events that are fun for the community and bring people together, which is awesome. And we need that because, yoga is so serious anyways. We got to lighten up a little bit. So it's like, I love things that can invite more community building and more just in fun engagement, getting people on their mats together. And I feel like the more we have, we continue down our journeys, we're going to find different skill sets and things that feed into our niche of what we want to offer and how we want to serve. And that's always developing. So real quick, before I kind of just like branch around a little bit, a big thing that has developed for me over the past probably year to 2 years specifically has been the interest in how business works. So the business of yoga and how it expands, like, especially in the world of being online. So once I decided to switch into an online platform, teaching yoga was a completely different story now, because now I'm like learning about technology and how to do lighting and how to, work the microphone and how to, don't even get me started on data storage in your phone. Okay. Sam and I have some conversations about that. But it's just recognizing that as you start to evolve and grow as a yoga teacher into these different pockets and outlets outside of just teaching normal yoga class, like studio classes, you're going to find what you can hone into based on your other skill sets, and you're going to keep growing into those skill sets as well, and they're going to take you in different directions. So business for me and more of the online direction is where my interest lies. So the hopes for these sessions that we come together is that we can harness and be able to kind of showcase our differences in our skill sets, because yes, at the end of the day, we're all yoga teachers, but to what degree, that's different. And what other skill sets we have plenty other skill sets that we have to bring to the table. So if we can all network and be able to kind of get to know each other, what we offer, what our services are, what we've been working on, what we want to grow or cultivate, what our intentions are, we're going to be able to network and bounce off of each other and be able to like grow exponentially as a group. So I'm curious, Sam, I know that you're doing like massage and stuff right now too, but what other kind of new beginnings or things do you find yourself kind of leaning in towards?
Well, when you were listing off all the ways in which we can like grow and what we want to do, I was thinking, well, also being able to talk about, I think as yoga teachers, what we struggle with to find those new beginnings, knowing that something needs to change to make it work, but maybe having a lot of different ideas and how to hone in on your direction, I think is what a lot of yoga teachers struggle with. Because you're kind of just saying yes as much as you can to opportunities that come your way, but is that your vision? And I would say I'm trying to get more clear on that. And I've said no to opportunities lately, yes to others. A lot of throwing some stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks a little bit, because things have changed so much. And last year was the first year that I took a real step back from teaching a lot of yoga, where that used to be, my bread and butter. And I went full-time massage and taking care of that business baby, I call it. And I felt this calling, I guess 6 months ago. It's kind of crazy that we're already over halfway through 2024. But I felt a call at the beginning of the year to return to yoga, to to show up in that kind of arena more. And that's where I am now. It's just more or less trying to figure it out. And I am approaching how to be a yoga teacher, not just in the yoga studio. And luckily, you know, I've had workshops that have helped support me, but now I'm starting to lead retreats, starting to go the online direction and kind of seeing how that feels, because I think sometimes we have, or at least for me, I have to experience how it feels to kind of be guided towards a yes or a no or what's next. So, and then continuing to hone in on what's really important. Why do I teach yoga? Why do I practice yoga? And that usually kind of guides me. So that being said, I'm kind of here to get some juices flowing. So it's not just me in meditation or talking to my partner about it, but it's nice to, you know, we've been on opposite coasts for a long time and not in deep connection like this, like we used to be, you know, at least weekly. So yeah, if that answers, I'm kind of in the first stages of new beginnings, I think.
I love that. Yeah. And hi, Stephanie. So good to see your face.
Sorry, I just like, I had a few things going on. I'm like, this is chaos. I need to just find a moment. So thank you.
Yes, of course. Don't feel like you have to share, but if either one of you guys want to pop on, I would love to know, like, how since, like, you know, even pre-COVID and how COVID, maybe how it's changed things, kind of where you're at as a yoga teacher, how you're feeling with your practice, with teaching. I'm just kind of curious to kind of get to know other pockets and what avenues. I see you're doing really cool stuff that's a lot different as well. So I'd love to know more.
I feel like since COVID, I'm not like one of the people that want to be on camera. I never felt like I was photogenic, and that really just kind of made you switch directions because you couldn't teach yoga unless you were on the camera. And I'm not even kidding. I would be just like sweating bullets. I'm like, oh my God. But then I'm like, why is it so much easier in person? So I really struggled during COVID. And then after COVID or during COVID, I was like, we could do outdoor stuff. So then I really just started to like do things outdoor, just trying to bring people together without them feeling like some type of way. And then right now I'm just kind of working on a studio. They kind of reached out to me and was like, hey, do you want to work here? And I was like, oh, I'm not a Pilates I don't know. I did Pilates after a car wreck. And I was like, oh, that was cool, but it never resonated with me. And so I was like, oh, like I'll teach yoga, and then kind of shifted. And then I don't know, I feel like I'm doing too much right now. Like I'm like, my new beginning is like just starting each day at this point. So just trying to say no more often. What is the purpose if I am saying yes? And is it bringing me joy? Those are my things. Like, is this event or class that somebody's asking me to do? Like, don't just say yes because of money, because times are hard. Like, say yes because your heart is calling to it. So I think that's where it's like hard right now, you know, because you're like, after COVID, you know, we were just trying to hustle for a little bit, like, and then everything is so expensive. So then you're like, oh, I could do one more class, and then, but where are you like filling your cup? So I think that's this year I was like, no, I cannot just say yes to everything just for fun, because then I was empty. So this year is more intentional.
I love that so much. Like, I'm so glad you said that. And I feel it in my soul, because I'm right there with you, girl. Yeah, I think alignment. Yeah, that's a huge thing that's come up, because I feel like COVID like shook everybody up, and it was like,
we were healers. So it really, you're just constantly pouring. And I'm like, I'm so tired. Who's healing me at this point? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that time that you have to take for yourself for like just re-nurturing. And I feel like when everything is kind of shooken up, then like we were all forced to be like, okay, now I have to realign everything like back into some kind of homeostasis. And so through the act of like realigning, I think people were starting to reflect on those alignment pieces and being like, ooh, yeah, that feels sticky. Like, I don't know if I want to do that anymore. Like, for me, I got rid of a lot of like people pleasing. Like, that was like probably a year and a half full of just like purging, you know? But yeah, the realignment, you know, it's funny because I remember when I was kind of bringing some of my new things that I'm working on kind of together. opportunities were kind of coming in, and like going back to what Sam said, it's like when you do have to start saying no to those opportunities, and not even just for the sake of feeling like it's taking too much time, but it takes too much energy to like do the things that just don't feel good anymore. It's just like, I can't even say yes to that. And like, even, you know, a bigger thing of like, okay, asking yourself, like, what is the bigger vision? Like, what am I trying to create? And then I started to realize, like, I knew my answer was like, I wanted to move in more of an online direction. And then I started noticing a lot of opportunities that were coming were offering me in-person kind of experiences and offerings. And I was thinking to myself, like, okay, remember right now, if you say yes to that, then you are kind of anchoring yourself to saying, I'm okay with not working in the direction of what I'm trying to build right now, you know, which is okay sometimes, but it was like, I had to actually be like, stop saying yes to those things, because it just, the time it takes, I could be spending on putting together something that is more in alignment with what I'm trying to build. And it's hard, like you said, because it's like, things are more expensive than ever before, but it's just like, man, yoga is, it's so crazy if you think about it like a hustle. It doesn't even become enjoyable at that point. It doesn't even have like the heart and soul that I feel like it started with when it starts to move in only a business direction, you know?
Well, and then kind of maybe veering off, but on the same topic, depending on who's listening to this, but to a new yoga teacher, you know, and this has always been kind of my question, like for a new yoga teacher, is that the only answer for them to just to gain experience, to be able to consider where they're going and how they grow is to hustle? That's kind, you know, it's kind of that idea of like, well, you work yourself up, you know, from the bottom to the top. Like, is that necessary to hustle as a yoga teacher from the get-go? You know, that's a big question that I think a lot of yoga teachers, as soon as they graduate and they start teaching at yoga classes, can they get yoga classes? Because a lot of yoga studios want them to have experience first, or B, they get tons of yoga classes. Now they're burnt out and they're like, I'm not making any money. I've got to go a totally different direction. They go back to school and they're not teaching yoga anymore. You know, that's what you kind of see a lot of newer yoga teachers do. So how do people start without that hustle? Is that possible?
I don't think so. I feel like I hustled so hard. I was just pimping myself out to everybody. It felt like in the beginning, I'm like, yeah, I'll teach here and here and here, and just drive into a million. No, like, just no. I would say just find a good spot. And if they don't take, I mean, Brenda, that's where I started, Brenda Athletics. And I felt like I was kind of teaching yoga to people that were coming in sweaty and they didn't know what yoga was. So it was really good experience for me because they weren't yogis. You know what I mean? They were just there because it was a class on the schedule, and sure, maybe I'll get a stretch. So I think at that point, that's where I gained a lot, because then I'm like, oh, I can kind of try anything on them. So, I mean, I've always told people kind of going through this journey, I felt like working at a gym was beneficial because it did help me grow and kind of be able to try new things. And there was no expectation because it's not a yoga studio. Like, they're not there to meditate. They're not there to really find chill. Some of them were, but most of the time it was like, oh, I'm just taking this class because it's on Tuesday at 5:30 and I'm already here. You know, it never felt like they were really excited for yoga. So, and then just, yeah, if you go to a studio, just make sure it aligns with your beliefs and the people. Because I don't know, I've met some really mean yoga teachers. So I was like, oh, yoga podcast? I didn't know we all got along.
Oh, it's so sad and yet so true. Because it's like, I don't know what it is, that there's such like a comparison thing that starts to happen too, where it's just like, oh, you know, this teacher's over here doing this, you know, it's like this direct, I don't know. I've never really like had that like disliking towards like, you know, other yoga teachers or anything. But I also know there's a ton more yoga teachers now than there were like in the beginning. Like for a while, there was only like, gosh, like, what do you think, Sam? Like maybe like 8 yoga teachers in the area. Was crazy.
Maybe like 10. Yeah.
Yeah. It was so wild. And so I feel like as it's grown.
Yeah, which is an easier place for new yoga teachers to be when it's not saturated so much and you're kind of in the I'm really grateful that I came into Modesto when I did as a yoga teacher. I had a lot of opportunity as each yoga studio opened up. I could, continue to take on more. But that I can say that one of the reasons, though, that I do teach at different studios and I don't do it in a way that's burning me out anymore. I have literally one class at each studio and I teach the exact same class every single practice for that week. So I'm not having to recreate because I have the same students coming to, every one of my classes during the week. So that's one way. But two is because of that idea of separation. It's like, no, we're all friends. And that's also why I personally enjoy practicing at different studios. I usually do have one that the vibe fits, the teachers fit, the feel of it, the schedule fits for me better, but I still intentionally go to other studios to create that more like larger yoga community. We're a yoga community within the city or within the community that you're in. And then you continue to like grow broader. And I think that that's one of, honestly, probably the top reason that I teach at different studios is to build those connections and hopefully spread that we can all love each other kind of vibe. You'll never hear me talking badly about any other studio owner, or any other studio. And I think that builds like a certain kind of trust, and then it allows hopefully a ripple effect, kind of my intention behind it. Yeah.
And I love that about you because you've always been doing that. I will say, I do think it's very difficult to do that when you are in the hustle and bustle, because it's just like, obviously we know that the time frames for yoga practice is always the same times. It's morning and it's evening time. And so it's like, I remember just feeling like at a point being like, man, I just want to practice. Like, I don't want to always teach. I just want to go to someone's class and just like turn off my brain and enjoy the practice. And I think it's really hard to do that when you're trying to make it as a yoga teacher. And so I feel like they kind of go hand in hand, because I don't think that you can skip that step. And my reasons behind that is I think it's a confidence builder. Like, if you're not being exposed to like, different students and like teaching group classes and having that studio experience, you're going to obviously lack the confidence to go and teach workshops and things like that, because it's like that step by step, and you get yourself to that point. Like, I couldn't imagine when I first started, running a studio. I'm like, shoot, like I had to like not only teach, but I also had to like manage a studio and understand how that worked to be able to like even understand what goes into it. So it's like, I do see the step by steps that it creates, but I think through those steps is where the separation begins, because we automatically are just thinking about, okay, got to take care of me, got to build my client base, got to find my people. And I will say, like, I remember like after classes, just sitting around with like Sam and other like the instructors and just being like, oh, I learned some new assists today. Like, let me show you kind of what I learned today, and like folding each other up into like little pretzels, and then like talking about crazy things that happen behind the scenes and stuff. And just feeling like this sense of gratitude for like, man, like it's so nice to have somebody that understands what it is to be a yoga teacher. Because like one of the biggest things that is like, it's a pet peeve is like when people are just like, oh, you're a yoga teacher. Like, that must be so much fun. Or like, it's like, or people who just think it's easy to just like go and just teach a class like that. And it's like, when you realize like the energetic exchange that goes into it, the overall intention, the education that goes into it, there's just so much involved that can feel a little bit like, hey, like we are doing big work, like we are doing these big things. And just wanting to have that impact and create that impact, but having people to feel supported by, to like build off of. Because like, if I didn't have people that were, sticking around with me after classes to talk out those little things, I would have felt like, first of all, I learned so much in those moments, because it was just like, I didn't know how to do a lot of those things that other people were sharing their education, like for me, I think that was the biggest thing, is like, we are all wells of information. Like, Stephanie, so much that I don't know. Anita, so much that I don't know. And like, same for you, Sam. And it's like, I no matter how long we've been doing it, it's like there's also this feeling of like, we've been teaching for X amount of years and da 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 da. And it's like, yes, we have experience through the teaching and whatnot, but that doesn't say that those who've been teaching for a year don't still have, really credible insight and ability to help other people become better teachers. And so it's like, how can we be able to have, all different teachers from different lineages and backgrounds and doing all these different things, being able to like share that and support one another, like ultimately is the key, because then it's like, that's when we become better teachers overall. So thank you, Sam, for all those little pretzels after class, because that was so, so helpful for me.
That was such a special time. And I will say, like, even despite what I just shared, is there is something really special when you do have, actually, I was just talking about this with someone, another yoga person the other day, how where there's a time in like a yoga studio community that you just feel like everyone's gelling like so well, like all the teachers, all the students, it's just like, like people can feel it even when they come in, even when they're not a part of it, and how that like, usually happens like a few years and then it kind of trickles away and then like maybe it builds back up again. But there are these moments where yoga studios, it's just like, and that was such a time where we would hang out all the time after class. And that was pre-COVID, we were all taking each other's classes and then, I had that ability. I don't do that as much, and maybe here in my new town, and maybe it'll come together like that again. But that's also probably a big reason why I'm teaching and practicing in different spaces, because I'm waiting for that, like, that time. Yeah.
How have you felt in that regard, Stephanie? Have you felt that sense of like connection, community?
I've been pretty disconnected for a couple years. I understand that gel feeling. I felt like I had that 2 years ago with Kelly, Kelly, and I just had so much fun teaching there. And then I was just filling. And then I had to take a step back, and I was just like, because I work at Studio V too, and I felt like it was different there. It's not a yoga studio, so then I didn't feel like people need you, but I feel like in a studio setting, they are coming for you. It's like less pressure at Studio V a little bit. And so I kind of felt like, I can be hurting, I can be whatever there. But when I worked at Koru, I was like, I can't bring any negative energy. Like they just lost somebody so special. Like I have to be the biggest cup and I have to fill it. And so I have been taking classes around like a little, but I haven't felt like I have a spot anymore. So like, I'm not practicing as much as I should. I have found a teacher that I really like. She does work with me, so I try to go to her classes, but it's not a studio setting. So it's like, I don't know, I've even thought like maybe I need to book like a private with her or something. I just, how you find those teachers that you resonate with? That's where I'm at. I'm like, I'm not sure I've found another one. So kind of in this weird spot.
I definitely feel that. And it's kind of interesting because I feel like we're all on that same caliber kind of, because I think since kind of stepping away and selling Elevate, it's like still nothing but love for that space and, the people. But now I'm out in the country. I'm like, 40 plus minute drive out from where all of the people were that I had built community with. And then, it's basically a 20 plus minute drive if I want to even go to a bigger town nearby. And it's like, I've found pockets of great people, and I do try to build that connection, but I also feel like, okay, well, there's a reason I don't feel this like magnetizing pull right now. I just have to like feel into what feels right for me. And I think like that's the interesting part about it is I'm very curious about people in their practice right now and how your practices actually feel. Because to be completely honest with you, my practice is not vinyasa yoga. My practice is hardly hatha yoga. My practice is more so just get on my mat and breathe and see what the heck happens. And most of the time, like the only consistent thing that I can say is my yoga is my meditation. My meditation is a staple that will never go away. And like, I can't even say never, because honestly, last year was a really, really tough year for me. Like mentally, I went through like a really depressive time and just like had to re-explore a lot of my inner shadows in depth. And I feel like I got disconnected from my practice, which is probably what led me into a deeper spiral within myself of just feeling so dysregulated. But when I finally was like, enough is enough, like sit down for even 5 minutes and just meditate, all of a sudden I started to feel that reconnection to myself. And so it's been a daily practice since I've re-implemented it. And it's been just like that remembrance of like, yoga is not just stepping on the mat and having, this full-blown practice. It's not me going to a yoga studio. It's not even just the community aspect. Like this is an inner journey. This is a me and how I can connect with my soul right here, right now, and just feel that. And so I feel like my yoga is it's so much more about just living mindfully and touching into that mindfulness aspect of my own practice to remind myself of who I am versus, when I look back at videos and pictures that I posted like even 10 years ago, 8 years ago in my practice, scorpion, my feet are touching my head. And I look back on those moments and I'm like, oh man, like, I wish I could still do that. And I have those moments and I'm like, I really don't care. Like, I don't want to do that. Actually, I just want to feel good and feel connected to myself and feel like I'm living with purpose and intention and love in my heart and just being a consciously living human being. And if my meditation practice does that for me, like, I feel like that is my practice. So I'm curious as to how yours just has shifted too.
Well, that's how I always come back to that, the Bhagavad Gita that says yoga is of the self, through the self, to the self. Like that's what it is. And so as much as like the community can be so important, like to growing your practice or feeling that energy, I think we all, especially during COVID, came to different ways of practicing. And then we've come to, I think, understand that will always evolve, but it is always just coming back to ourselves, whatever that looks like. Because I think no matter, like I'm starting to get into my Ashtanga practice again after letting it go for literally years. And where like you, it was just meditation. I felt the strongest in, not necessarily my asana practice, but in that practice of connecting to myself, connecting to higher self, connecting to spirit, just by sitting my ass down and getting quiet with myself. And I think a lot of not just yoga teachers, but practitioners learned other ways of practicing during COVID. And that's shifted so much of whether it's home practice, online practice, they're not even wanting to get into studios so much, or they don't feel that drive to, and others that craved that opening, I think it's different for everyone.
Do you actually have a Ashtanga community out there at all?
There is, and I started as soon as COVID kind of opened the doors. That's when I started practicing there, and I could just feel. One, it didn't go with my schedule. When my massage practice opened up, I live 30 minutes outside of the city, so unless it jived, with my work schedule, then I would be gone for like 10, 12 hours during the day. So I was like, okay, I need to, do it at home now. But at the same time, my body was just needing me to actually take a break from it. So I listened. I was going through a lot of things then that actually Ashtanga, I think, and, this is another conversation, but that Ashtanga, I think, in a way triggered some stuff in me that I needed to heal. And now that I've like taken a break and healed that, I can feel myself wanting to get back into that practice. That being said, the Ashtanga, the Mysore space, the teachers are amazing where I am. But yeah, it doesn't really work with where I live and my schedule. So, and my home practice in Ashtanga was always the most meaningful anyways. So yeah.
It's interesting because like, I do feel like right now I'm craving guidance from somebody, like not necessarily like, yeah, maybe it's the craving of a teacher or a mentor or a guide of some sort. Like I feel in some capacity, we're always looking for someone to like, learn and grow from. But I have a harder time with getting on my mat and moving in the ways that I used to, which was, just kind of going through this full, like, self-guided practice. Like, when I think about, man, I'd put myself through a full-blown vinyasa class, like, but guide myself through it. And I'm like, I feel like now where I'm at in my life, like, I have to put myself in a space to be able to, like, foster that kind of experience, that when I step on my mat, like, I already know going into it, like, that's not going to unfold on my own. Like, my practice is going to look completely different, but I'm craving that. I'm just craving it from something that brings me that sense of, like, inspiration again, or that feeling of, I don't know, it's like a magnetism almost, like when you find, like you said, that right teacher or that right community or pocket that just kind of opens you up and makes you feel very connected and alive, and it just, like, excites you to go there and to be a part of that community, and to be, you feel just so supported in that space. And I think being in an online world makes it so different, because it's like, now I'm teaching I'm teaching my phone, and, like, not seeing anybody on the other end. I'm not getting any of that other kind of, like, feedback or response or connection or anything like that too. So, yeah, I just feel like I'm in this craving space for wanting input to flood in, so I can feel that sense of connection again. And so in the meantime, I'm like, well, I'll just meditate and just continue to lean into what feels good until I find that right thing that just kind of, like, lights up my practice for me again, but I actually have found myself wanting to play with more, like, inversions and getting upside down again. So I'm, like, kind of curious as to maybe, like, the deeper meanings of that too. Like, I'm like, needing to shift my perspective up a little bit, needing to, work on something that's a little bit more challenging for me right now, and to kind of face that fear of, doing a hard thing again. Really, that's what it comes down to, doing something that's hard and sucking at it again.
Well, I think when we're in, like, which again, I'll still say, like, I've heard so many people's stories, right? My clients, both massage and yoga. It's been 4 years since COVID began, and there's been so much grief that people have had, and big changes that people have had. And when you have big changes, like, if we're talking about new beginnings, when you begin something new, usually you're saying goodbye to something else or something that you're leaving behind. And no matter what that is, it could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be, leaving a town, like, whatever, your business. It's like, you're going to have grief. You're going to experience grief. And I think for a lot of people, for at least me, and I think you too, but when you're grieving, you're not wanting to go upside down. You're not wanting to, like, build fire. You're wanting to, like, be with earth. You're wanting to be back in that root chakra, that safety space. And so that's why, like, my practice became, I think, a lot slower, a lot more walking meditations, a lot more seated meditations, and just letting myself do that. When I was trying to, like, force myself to move in ways that it didn't want to move, my body was like, no, you need to grieve. You need to heal. So I think that a lot of us were coming out of that, and now we're looking for community again. We're looking for maybe ways to move, differently again. So
I don't think I thought about that. You don't want to be upside down when you're grieving. Like, why am I trying to shake it up? I already feel shaken. You know what I mean? So I haven't done, like, a handstand or anything upside down in probably, like, 2-3 years. I'm like, no, my practice is super slow too. More just intentional. I get on the mat. Sometimes it's like, maybe I'm just going to sit here and drink my coffee and breathe, or maybe I'm going to meditate, maybe I'm going to move. So it's kind of different every day. There's not like I'm doing a flow every day, or it's just really just kind of just rolling out the mat. And then maybe I even stare at it for a little bit, or like, what do I want to do? But yeah, just even sitting on it, just connecting with the mat, like, definitely feeling more grounded. But yeah, I kind of feel I want to shake it up too. Like, it sounds fun. Like, kind of miss doing that.
Yeah, and it is fun, and it's such, like, I don't know, like, I feel like it can be such a communal thing too. It's like, it reminds me of, like, when I used to go to the park and practice handstands in the park, and then across the park you see, like, kids start jumping up into handstands and people watching, and then they're starting to do, like, cartwheels and stuff, and you're like, man, it's so impactful. Like there's so much energy behind it. But like I literally just got chills over my body when you were talking, Sam, and like tears, because it's just like I can feel the words of like, yeah, like pre-COVID, I would describe my energy during that time. I felt like I was in the air. Like I felt like I was just kind of floating around and just like trying to figure out where I was going to land. And it was like this, everything's possible. And I'm just going to say yes and float around here and float around there. And then it was like, I finally kind of like had to choose something. And when I landed, it's just like you fall into these, like, I feel like when COVID happened, it's like it shook everything up. And like you said, like it's this feeling of needing to be grounded and finding more of those postures that help you to feel that sense of security and comfort and like, you know, stability, that it's just like, it almost like it brings tears, because it's just like, it makes sense how connected we are with like universal energy, and yet how we're all on the same page, just kind of doing it in our own separate ways, where it's like maybe we're not even aware that that's why we're feeling called to do those things, when inside my brain all I'm thinking is I'm frustrated because I want to be able to do energizing things. I want to be, you know, full of energy and being active in my on my mat and in my practice, but inside my body was like, like I don't want that. Like I want something more mellow and grounding. And I feel like now it's been, like you said, 4 years. Like it's absolutely wild. And I feel like, okay, we've had time to, it's all broken down, and we've had to lay a foundation again. Like we've got that sense of like, you know, maybe we're still putting pieces of that foundation together, but we can start to slowly build now. And it's interesting because I feel like, have you guys noticed people crawling out of the woodworks? Like people you haven't talked to, even on social media, people I haven't seen like active or doing anything. All of a sudden, it's like this light turns on again, and people are like, oh, I'm finally finding myself again. I'm stepping out into the world again, and I'm finding my way back into the practice. And it's just like, it's mind blowing to be like, you too, like we're all doing that collectively.
I mean, I don't know how it is in Modesto, Stephanie, where you are in regards to the yoga studios right now, but I can tell you the yoga studios that I'm a part of here, all the owners are saying, we are just now seeing like after COVID, like summer has been actually like the first, because I think last year a lot of people would say, oh, it's a good thing you made it through COVID. Good job for making it through COVID, like congratulating studio owners for making it through. And last year they were like, we're still in it. Like we are still in it. And it's like this summer that like you can see it in the studios, and you can actually see the studio owners like exhale a little bit and then start building again. Like, okay, we could add more things. We can add more classes. We can add a retreat, you know, and feeling safe. Everyone feels a lot more safe now. And once you feel safe, then you get to grow from there, right?
I definitely feel like this summer classes have picked up. You know, I kind of felt like it was just a solid, let's say 6 or 7. And that was like on a good day. Now I just kind of feel like classes are, people found like are feeling that too. Like they're like, I want to find my spark again. You know what I mean? Because we just rode this little COVID train. That's what I call it. Like just the depression or the anxiety and just kind of the unknown of, you know, and just not like tapping into the universe. Like, why are we listening to all this busy things? And, you know, and I think that's why grounding was, everybody was craving grounding. And I still feel like my slower classes are the bigger ones. Like people are just now kind of wanting, because, so I'm like easing them into it. Like we can still ground, but like, it's good to move, you know? And I kind of feel like, man, those slower classes packed. The flow classes, they're like, I don't like, how hard is the flow? I'm like, just get your ass on the mat. Like, let's figure it out. Like, I don't know. I'm just real. Like, come on. Like, like just try
I resonate with that right now too. I'm like, oh, do I want that?
I know, but I'm like, me too. I'm like, ooh, I really want to go to a class, but is there like a slow one? Like, how much do we have to flow? Like, but that's just like me, like just trying to get out of the funk of just wanting to rest, you know, like I think I've rested enough, but my heart just is like, oh, rest. And I'm like, no, let's go. But then it's just like, where's that medium? Like, I need like a good hatha class to start.
So true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I feel for these students. So I'm like, okay, I've turned it into like a hatha. I'm like, okay, like maybe we just breathe a little bit more. That's fine. You know, like let's ease into the flow. So.
And And I agree with that too. I'd say Hatha has probably been the most popular for my classes recently, or even over the past like 4 years. And you know, like even kind of going what you said, Sam, like I remember during actual COVID, like there was so much support from people, you know, during COVID and even kind of trickling into 2021. There was just so much support from the community and trying to like help keep the community alive and float and everything. But like, I do agree that it's like, it gets to a certain point where people are like, okay, like we made it through the hard times. Like we're good, we're golden now. And then, like you said, I think that a lot of studio owners and even teachers in general who are at these studios started to feel the repercussions 2 years, 3 years out, because it's just like, you know, when the whole world is healing from something so big and traumatic, it's like, you know, thank you, Stephanie, by the way, for being part of this. When you're a part of something like so traumatic, it's like it takes time to heal and process and work through all of that. That it's like, yeah, when people aren't showing back up to their mats, they're not ready for the practice. They don't want to get back into the way things were. They need to still process and figure out who they are moving forward and what serves them best moving forward. And then us yoga teachers were over here just kind of like, well, crap, like I'm still here ready to serve. Like I want to do this. And now more than ever, because I haven't been able to do it to any capacity throughout this entire time. And it's just like throws a wrench in the gear and you're just like, oh my God, like how am I supposed to connect in the way that, you know, I used to? And then I think 2022 and 2023 were like the hardest years as far as just like people coming to classes. It was just like, I felt like half the studio moved away or just like stopped coming, or just like it, part of it makes me sad because I'm like, probably a lot of these people would benefit from having some kind of practice during this time, you know, rather than just giving it up altogether. And, you know, I had a lot of students that were like, I'm not going to shift online. I'm not going to go in that direction. Like, I'm just probably going to come back whenever the studio's open and stuff. But then it's like, studio's open, you don't see them. And then it's just like, you know, it's so sad I saw something today that was like the saddest. Oh, I think you had liked it or something, Sam. It was like the saddest part about being a yoga teacher is like not knowing, like you're saying, you know, you have these last moments with people that you'll probably never see again, you know? And it's like, I think COVID was a lot of grieving in the sense of like, my regulars are no longer my regulars. The people that I'm used to seeing and like, that we fill each other's cup, like I'm no longer getting that anymore, you know? And it's like, yes, there's still amazing people that came to support, and I'm so grateful for those people. But it was definitely a difference in energy altogether that I think was a little bit hard to process at first.
I agree. I do have to go, guys. I'm sorry.
Oh, we're wrapping up right now anyway. So I super appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just give a quick little closing here because that's really,
yeah,
you're good. So I just want to say this was absolutely amazing. This is how I wanted it to feel, very conversational. We have a general focus and a topic, but overall, I wanted to just be about yoga teachers connecting on different topics and insight and being able to share person to person, not even yoga teacher to yoga teacher. Just we're all people here experiencing life through the lens of a yoga teacher and able to share our insights. So Sam and we might have other speakers come on too that are helping to like co-host these types of things with different topics. The next one I want to do is specifically on kind of like the business of yoga and how things have changed. And so we'll talk about like more of the financial aspect and like different avenues and stuff like that as well. So we'll get the details together for that. But I just want to give a very so heartwarming thank you to all of you for being part of this. The first one to start it all, new beginnings. Thank you so much for being a part of this today, you guys.
Thanks, Yoga Pod.
I know. I have that. Guys, I can't wait to see what's next.
Yay! Well, we'll see you all soon.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a good day.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.